finally stopped raining and we're back to the Canadian wildfire smoke. But that's okay. It's a balmy 58 degrees, a little bit cooler here today. I've got the Ural back in the garage because we've got a little bit of work that we need to do on it. I'll show you what's going on with the rear tire that we didn't get to when we went on the rally we went to before. So let's get to that. So here you can pretty much see what's going on. That rear wheel, we call it the pusher, is angled pretty heavily. Well, I asked quite a few folks about it and they said, oh, it looks like it's squared up to the frame and it's just your fender. Well, I agree that the fender may be a little bit leaning to the opposite direction to make it exaggerated, but it's not that much. The wheel is definitely leaning more than it should. We're gonna start getting that pulled off so we can see what's going on with it. It could be a bent swing arm or a bent frame. We'll try and figure that out. So I thought I'd give you a little demonstration of why this is such a big deal and why that wheel is such an issue. In corners, when you're taking a vehicle like a sidecar, let's say this is your sidecar and this is the bike. When you take corners this way to the right, that rear tire will sometimes start to fold, and if it's already tilting that way, then it's going to fold on the sidewall even more. So normally when you're riding a motorcycle by itself, you push the gas and the rear tire just makes it go, and you just use leaning to steer the bike. With a sidecar, it's a little bit different because when you turn the throttle, it would go forward, but it's got this sidecar attached, and this isn't powered, so it kind of acts a little bit like an anchor. Yes, it will start rolling, but initially when it takes off, it wants to go this way because there's power here. This is a pivot point for the wheel that's here, and it'll make it go like this. So your muscles get used to it, and you just end up steering this direction, and so you get this just slight little wiggle, and then you'll head down the road. But then, as you're, say, going 30, you're coming down the road, you have momentum. Whether you hit the brake or let off the throttle, now you have the sidecar that weighs a couple hundred pounds that has a bunch of momentum. And so as soon as you let off the throttle, you naturally have some sort of drag on the bike, whether it's the brake or the engine itself. But you have this momentum wanting to push. So now it pushes, this momentum of the sidecar carries forward and makes it want to turn like this. Again, you just get used to it with your muscle memory, and it's only a slight move of the handlebars and you keep going straight. Now when you're going down the road, what happens is you constantly have power coming from your rear tire here. And so unless you want to constantly be steering this way with the front tire to keep it straight down the road, you have to do some adjustment. So one of the things that we do is we turn the sidecar, we call it toe in, just slightly. I'm exaggerating it, but we point this wheel here. That makes the sidecar want to go to that side of the road, as the bike, the rear tire with power, wants to go this way. They counteract each other, and you won't even have to steer, and it will go down the road together. The other thing we do, because the road has a crown to it, usually towards the side of the road, that's extra pull that pulls you to the side. So what we do is we take the side, or the bike itself, and tilt it out 1 or 2 degrees from the sidecar. So you have a slight tilt and you have a slight toe in, and all of those things help it just go down the road straight. Then we use braking on the sidecar to help it stop straighter as well. And really the only force you have to counteract that's ever really negative is that initial acceleration that makes it want to go this way. You just turn the steering wheel and it will keep it pretty straight. All right, we have got the rear wheel off. So now the next step is going to be removing this final drive unit. Okay, so you can see I have the final drive out. That just tilts away and then sets down and pulls off of the drive shaft here, this spline drive. So that makes it pretty easy. So next I'm going to work on getting these bolts out, getting these shocks loosened up, and then working on getting this whole swing arm out. All right, so here's what I've got set up. A couple blocks of wood in the front and then a couple in back. And as you can see, that's level. And let's check the front. Pretty darn level. So I'll set the swing arm on here, and then that should tell me if I have some imbalances. All right, I think we found our culprit. So I got this all set up. It's level, the blocks are level. If I measure the back side of it, you can see it's pretty darn level. It's as level as the block was. Then I move it to these front areas where these, but not onto the welds, just to where the front of this front tube is. And that's even better. And that's just as level as these blocks were. We put it at the inside and I hold it against that. You can see it's level. There's these little indentations. That's what I'm holding it into. Uh-oh. And that is the direction that the wheel was leaning. It was leaning to the outside, which, if you were looking at the back of the motorcycle, that's how the wheel was. So I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to go about fixing that, but that's definitely what's causing the lean that I've got. I'll have to look at some options, and I may just end up having to buy a new swing arm. We'll see. I noticed, if you look closely, that brake, there's not much wear on it. In fact, I can make a mark. I can rub it off, which means the brake pad's probably not working, which means the piston on the outside is not. Let me show you what this should look like. Voila. You can see all that shininess, all the grooves in there. That's a brake rotor that's actually had a pad contacting it. I need to take a look at this, because what I think is happening is this side of the piston is not pushing out. We're going to try that here in a second and see if we can get that figured out. Some good news is that we checked the caliper and it is coming out both sides. So I think I just don't have the slave cylinder for the sidecar brake set up tight enough. The other thing I'm going to be doing now is taking this Trail Tech unit. I have a new dock for it so that it will sit on it properly and it won't have to be zip tied on. And I'm going to hook up a couple of the lights that I didn't quite get wired in completely. So I'll go ahead and try and get that done. What I did is I moved over all the indicator lights that were kind of being used over here. So that's low fuel, which the ground wasn't hooked up. So maybe my low fuel light is working. The battery or charging issue, and then that's the check engine light. What I'm going to end up doing more than likely is I'll buy another set of these lights and just use one extra set. I can still mount it onto this other side, and I'll have one for the check engine and the battery on this side. And then what I'm going to end up doing is getting some plugs for these holes right here. And then I had somebody offer to 3D print me a cover for this, so I might do that. And then I'll just have a hole. So this will be covered up really nicely. So that's all I'm going to probably do this evening. I still have the sidecar wheel off over there. I didn't put it back on. It's ready to go back on, but I want to go get some moly paste, which is really good for the spline. Same thing with the rear, even though I'm further away from getting that set back up. And I will work on jacking up the front of this because I have to drop the fork out a little bit, the triple tree, and work on the bearings. They're kind of a nightmare, and so it causes some major steering issues. So I'm going to get that grease replaced, as I've been told it will help, and I'll work on that tomorrow. Well, I am going to go ahead and get this sidecar wheel back on. I've got some moly grease. That's what I was waiting for. I can get that buttoned up. Well, that gets that sidecar wheel on. Well, that's all I have for tonight. It's quitting time, and so I'm gonna pick this up later this week, maybe tomorrow. If you enjoyed watching this, please feel free to like this video. I'll be sure to put out more on the Ural, and what's coming up next, probably the next thing you'll see is us dealing with the head bearings. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.